Okay, what I'm going to ask you to do now is come in with a sharp knife, and I'm going to ask you to clean off the eyes that have paint on it. Just get and just roll over the glass side. It should come off fairly easy. And over here too, on this side, and all that will come out. And I think we're all good to go there. So what's going to happen is, when I left you previously, before I painted this and gave it a second coat, and then it actually needed a third coat, so I gave it a third coat. But depending on how thick your mix is, you can get there in 2 coats, but in this case here, I went 3 coats on a lot of it, not all of it, but that seems to be pretty white, and I think we're in good shape there. Now, I'm going to ask you to get burnt umber again, and we'll score that a little bit, like that. I'm going to add water, probably going to mix it, maybe about a half a cup of water in there, and then really mix this up good. And we're going to start with this as the first coating. So it's burnt umber, and it's not quite a pea size, but almost that. And I want to make sure I get all of this mixed well. That's one of the things you want to try to achieve, is get the paint pretty well dissolved into the water. Now, there's going to be portions of this where it's going to come off the snout, come back through the eyes, and it's going to be brown above that and on top of the head and all of the body. But you want to keep a certain area clear, and I'm going to show you on a finished one I've done here. Here's the mounted one, and you can see from the snout over, it comes just past the eyes and around here. We want to keep this with the burnt umber up top, but we don't want to go below that. And if you do, we'll whiten it again, but you try not to do that if you can. So I'm going to come in here, and again, I'm not trying to get a whole lot of heavy paint in there. I'm coming in, and I'm trying to just get a coat on here, and it's not like it's runny. I want you to have a controlled wash. So we're building this up, and it is going to be a build-up of washes. So I'm going to charge my brush up again, and I'm going to come to the other side. I'm going to come right up to the snout, come through the eyes, get back into the eye. Let me make sure I got back in that side. I'm going to do this side here, come back, then it scoots around what I call the cheek area here. And if you notice, I really am not having paint like running all over. Now, I want you to come back, and there's an area that you don't want to go into. So I'm going to try to give you some boundaries here, like here. Definitely get the paws. And we're gonna come around in here. And this will be like the first coat of the burnt umber. And we're gonna, I apply and just keep on moving the paint. I don't want a real heavy buildup in any one area. I'm not trying to get a true color of the otters right away. I'm just trying to get a brownish look in areas and to put a boundary of where I want this to turn brown. And that's what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to get an area that you can see where we want to keep this on the brown side, and then we can move back because everything behind it is going to turn brown. But right at the moment, we're trying to get the paws and the legs and everything with a coat of the burnt umber. And this is how you get the first coat on. Doesn't look pretty, but it's doing the job. And we'll move that on. And it doesn't always look like it goes on even, and that's fine too. But it will get darker as we go. And I like to do this with the wash to get it in a position that I can always lighten it or darken it. And I will add other colors into this as we go because the otter does have some reddish highlights to it. And we will add that in as we go too. And in the case of the top of the head and the back coming right on down through the top of the tail, we will add some black to it because they have like a black streak. It's almost looks like a darkened brown, but we do add black, and that really shows it up, and that will be like an interesting. It's just the otter itself, how it's set up. It does have like a black streak down there. It's not like a skunk type. It's very subtle, but it's there of dark areas on the fur, and that's what we're going to try to achieve. Now, I'm going to get enough paint where it needs be to turn brown, and I'm going to go down onto the tail in a second here, and I'm going to try to alleviate the finger painting by grabbing the cheeks, which were not painted, like this, and then I can paint the tail. I'm going to try to hold that like that and get the tail all done. And I'm just looking for one basic coat of brown on there that it's not totally even, but it's got almost everything that needs to be coated set up. So I'm going to rinse the brush out so that I get it out of water, and that paint is out of there now. And I'm going to get the hair dryer. And I'm going to aim this over here. And I'm going to dry that. Because it's a wash, it should be able to dry fairly fast. I think that should do it. Now, I'm going to go back in and I'm going to do it a second time. And this is, I'm starting to get some paint that it hasn't been mixed in well, so I'll go through that. And now I'm going to come back again through the eyes over here. We're coming in right here. I'm going to add a little white later on because we have like hard edges here, and I want that to blend in, and I'll show you how to blend it out so that there isn't a real, what I call, hard line between the white and the burnt umber here that we're putting on. And as you can see, it gets darker after each coating, and we layer this on, and it's sort of like a controlled way of doing it. I always put, like when I'm doing birds and stuff like that, I'm even more specific on the washes. We're sort of like freelancing this pretty easy because this animal tends to be an easy paint job, but when you get into birds, you have subtle changes along the way with different colors and everything else, depending on the bird, and you want to get some shadowing in and everything else. With the otter, it's pretty cut and dry. It's not that magical as far as painting goes, and it's the reason why this is one of my first videos lessons that I'm giving. And I picked the otter because I felt as though the otter was easy to adapt for painting and compared to a bird. Now, later on, I'm going to be also putting birds on and having a lesson with them. And that should be more interesting as far as the painting. I'll be a little more specific, and the coats will be a lot lighter, and they don't go on as heavy. And sometimes you're thinking you're not putting any paint on at all, and that's the beauty of knowing how to control the wash. But on otters, you're sort of just being a little more loose with it. I notice you'll get spots like this now and then that come up and don't get as dark, and that could be contributions of the way the paint settled in on the spray, the undercoat, or but don't worry about that, because our other stages along the way here will take care of those. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. One thing I try to do is keep the paint moving rather than blob up in one area and try to make it seem like it's it's coated in one coat. No, it's not that. That's not what we're doing here. We're building colors up, and it takes a little patience to accomplish what we're doing, and the main idea is to go with the washes. You could, paint this with almost like paint coming out of the tube, but then it's sometimes going to be too dark, and I like the way the washes go. You can always make a wash stronger too. You can modify and put more paint in, but trying to get there quicker isn't always the answer. And you'll see what I'm talking about. It does come with each additional wash. And like I said, you're going to get spots where the paint seems like it doesn't want a texture. Sometimes that is also will occur when you have oils on your hand, or when you are touching the piece. Sometimes the oils want to resist the paint, and it takes a little more time. But the nice part about the Otter is, and you can see the coloring that's coming on there now. If it stays white up in here, I do want to go back and make sure that there isn't white up here. But that looks pretty good right there. And I'm trying to touch everything for a second coat here. And you don't want to overwork it where, say, if you apply a wash, you should apply it and then just keep moving. A lot of times when you're scrubbing it in, you want to go in one direction, and because what happens is your brush acts like a sponge, and you can pick up as much paint and take it off as you put on. So you can't act like you're scrubbing this on. I try to go in one direction and leave it at that. So now that I have that, I'll rinse my brush out again, take all the paint out that may still be in the brush. Now, put that there, and I'm going to hit this with the hairdryer. Try to dry this pretty thoroughly now. What we're going to do is we're going to come in with other colors shortly, and make sure this wash is really dry. I see a couple of white spots like right in here and things like that, but we'll get it. We'll get it. Okay, so now we got 2 coats of the burnt umber on there. I'm going to come back and we're going to do a little bit. I'm going to put a little bit of white, just a little bit. Just enough to play with some white, because I'm going to also go with burnt sienna, and this is just to put like a reddish hue to the brown. And we're going to go with the black. I got more black in there than I want, but that's okay. And then I'm going to use raw sienna. A little bit of that will go a long way too. Now, I'm going to add a little bit of water to each one. I'm going to rinse the brush out on every one because you don't want to contaminate the colors if you could possibly do that. So we got white here. And I think I need more white because what happened was I didn't want that much water in there, especially for the white. So I'm going to come back and add a little bit more white into the mix. So it's like creamy because I want to be able to wet blend one color into another. And I'm going to rinse the brush out. Come back, get all the white out of there, like so. Then I'm going to add maybe a quarter cup of water for the burnt sienna, because this thing comes on strong anyway, this color. It's a very strong color. And mix that up real good. Take most of it off my brush, rinse it out. Get the brush, clean it so it doesn't contaminate the other colors too much. I'm going to do about a quarter on the raw sienna. Mix that. In fact, I got a little more paint than I want in there, so I will just add a little more water. So, but you want a little bit of paint and a little bit of paint. It's not much. Then I'll rinse that out. Get that off my brush too. And then I'm going to add some black. I got more black paint than I need in there, but we will mix this. I want it sort of watery. I'm going to take this excess out of here. That is a blob and a half of black that I really don't need in there. So I'm going to at least have a half a cup of black, a half a cup of water with the black paint. Okay, and this thing will come on strong too if you don't control it. Now, one of the things I was trying to show you here was in this area here, we have this line, and I want to sort of blend it out. So what I'm going to do is pick up a little bit of the white back into here, and then I'm going to come up to that edge and just touch it just a little bit. And then I'm going to rinse that the white out, pick up a little bit of raw sienna in here, and take most of the paint off, and then just blend it right in and back here, like so. And it sort of breaks up that hard line that we have, and it smooths it out. Okay, then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to come in with a little bit of white right up in here. Okay. I'm going to rinse that out. Pick up a little bit of the raw sienna and just come in on that and do this on the back side. And what I'm also going to do is where it's down in the breast here too. Again, I'll do a little bit of white just to soften that out right there. And wherever it looks like it's got a hard line, let me just I got a little bit of that heavier white that didn't all get mixed. And I'm going to just touch up along the way here, all the way around. Then I'm going to rinse my brush. And I'm going to pick up a little bit of the raw sienna and go into the brown and around the edge where the brown meets the white and soften that out. I'll get a little bit more just to blend that back like so. Okay, so we're starting to soften that edge up, and we got some highlights down in here. I'll do a little bit more. I should have mixed some burnt umber to come back on here too, which I think I'll do real quick here. Rinse the brush out. Get a little bit more of that burnt umber that we used initially there. Put a little bit of that in the cup. Add the water. We'll say maybe a third of the cup or a half, and mix that up real good again. Now I'm going to rinse this out. Get the brown out. Then I'm going to pick up some of the watered down one and then come back in over here and not go all the way in to that raw sienna that we had there. That raw sienna is still like on the edges. I'm just going to come in here and just sort of blend up to it, but not completely. And then I'm going to do the same thing in here. Woo, a little strong. Must have picked up some of the heavier. So what we will do is we'll go back with the raw sienna. And let me rinse my brush out. I got too much of the burnt sienna in there. And I'm going to blend that out all along there so you don't have a hard edge. Come back with some more right here. Blend that out. I'm going to rinse my brush because my burnt umber is getting a little heavier. I don't want it too heavy. I'm going to come in here. I'll see how that looks there. That looks pretty good. Oop. Made a nice mess on that. Let me just clean that up. Okay. So we got this blended out. Now the paws can get a little darker. That's not a problem. And I'm going to come back a little bit more. Now what I'm going to do as I start moving back, and let me also get the pole on this side so I can keep the same colorations going the same. Getting this. In there. And blending it in one direction. Now I'm going to pick up some of the burnt sienna, which is your reddish mix, and sort of add that in as we go, because the otter does have some reddish highlights in its fur. So as I'm putting in, again, the burnt umber, and I apply it as we come back, and on the underneath side here as well, I'm going to pick up some of the burnt umber and apply that in there too. And that'll give us some reddish highlights in these areas here too. So it's a combination of the two that get blended right on in. And each time we do this, it gets darker and darker. And it's just a build-up. And you gotta have patience with it. And that was burnt umber that I'm applying as we go. Then I'm going to get the burnt sienna, which is your reddish mix, and apply that and keep on going back with it. Here we go again. Burnt umber. Okay. Get everything around here with a coating of burnt umber. Then come back with the raw sienna, with the burnt sienna, excuse me. Darker in here. And before you know it, it starts taking on the look of the otter. So now I'm going to switch around to holding the front here and doing the tail. Again, I'm going to come in here and do a portion of the tail, and then that's burnt umber and then raw sienna on top of it, all at the same time. Let me get down here too. And then I'm going to do this half up here, coming up here, right to the end. A little bit of raw sienna going right on up. Switch this around to this side. Burnt sienna, burnt umber, I'll get it right first. Okay. And then we're going with raw sienna on top of that. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to stop this video at this point right now and let this dry. I'll use the hair dryer, but I just will leave it at this. I'm going to let it dry. I'm going to dry it myself. Then we'll come back and I'm going to do another part of the painting of this so that you can see how all of this will finalize. I have to use the black yet and everything else. So